Hi, and welcome to another video in the RHCE video series. Today's video is on Ansible facts. So Ansible facts are essentially variables which we can gather from the system, the remote systems, or potentially from the local Ansible server as well. So it can be things like the Ansible client version that's currently running, or Python version, etc. Also around maybe a particular system variable we're pulling out, or the application version that's installed, the Red Hat Linux version, and all that sort of stuff can be used to make your playbooks more dynamic. So for example, a good example of this perhaps is you need to install a specific package onto a number of systems, and you have to install the Red Hat version, Red Hat 6 version for some systems, and the Red Hat 7 version for others. So if you have that case, then you want to ensure that you then have that filter. So you're going to gather the facts, get the information about the system. Yeah, this is Red Hat 6 and this is Red Hat 7, and then based on that we can have then actions in the Ansible playbook. So let's go through and do some examples. So as always, I'll just launch the terminal, and I'll just sudo to make my life easier and not have to worry about anything else. Okay, so I think it's root and then facts 101. So I'll just copy this from the variable setup. So we should have an inventory which has a couple of groups, and we've got some set variables here as well, and we've got that client one, which is the working client. Okay, so the first one, let's just do an example of collecting a variable from a machine. And this case is just getting the local Ethernet address or the network card address. So we just do an ipconfig. We can get the card name because I won't remember that. So let's just do a clear. So I've got that ready to go. So let's do a VIM, and we call it get IP address .yaml, and did I do VI or VIM? Let's see, VIM. Okay, cool. So triple dash for the YAML file, dash space, and then name. We give it some kind of name. Collect the local IP address. So it's going to collect the IP address of the Ansible server. So for host, we'll just put localhost. And then tasks, we're then just going to have a debug. So it's dash space debug colon. Okay. And then we have MSG or message, and then dash, and then the message. So the IP address of is, and then what we're going to do in the what's called the Ginger 2 format, which is basically double curly braces opening, and then the variable we want. So with the variable that we're going to get dynamically, so it's Ansible underscore the card interface name dot IPv4 dot address, and double curly braces to close, and then just a quote end. So yeah, Ansible, so Ansible underscore and then the interface name dot IPv4 dot address. So they get the IPv4 address of that. So that should be good. Let's run it and see. So Ansible -playbook, and then just get IP address. So what have you noticed? I didn't actually specify the inventory file because in the actual file itself, we're specifying hosts as local local host anyway. So that would actually filter it anyway. So there's no point of even bothering to specify anything there. So you can see there, host equals localhost. So if we don't specify it, it's just going to select our localhost anyway. So that's that. There are also some modules like the Ansible setup module, which sets up all the environment for Ansible. So if we run against the local host again, because it's just easy. Yep. So Ansible localhost -m, so m for module, and just run the setup module. And if we grep for Ansible, we're going to see a bit of output once it's complete. So you can see all the detail it gathers, and my God, it does gather a lot of detail. So we can see the BIOS, which is VirtualBox, not surprisingly, because it's we can see the distribution information where it's stored, etc. Red Hat release, it's standard place. We can see it's Red Hat. We can see it's Red Hat version 8. We can also see distribution version 8.3. So you can see it gathers a lot of information here. You can see the kernel version, the release information, memory total, the node name. So you can use all these values to filter bits of information out, and using that info, as we mentioned before, we can use that to have dynamic playbooks. So you can have that. You can use that kernel version or the Red Hat Pacific version to have that sort of information. So obviously you can also run it against a remote client. So we've got that client 1 in the inventory file. So I've just done an extra -i inventory in here and did the same grep. And again, we can see all the Ansible detail we get out there. So if we do a clear, if we don't grep for Ansible, you'll see the entirety of it. So this is the mother load here, and you can see there's just so much data that Ansible is able to gather from these systems. And again, it can be really useful to have that information. Maybe not in every case, but in a lot of cases that can be really, really useful. So there's also another type of fact, or it's what's more called a registered variable, and this is essentially a factor gather again, but it's only stored in the memory of that particular running playbook. So whereas the other ones may store it into the cache of the actual module, whereas this one will be just stored as part of that particular running execution. So let's create another one called register underscore variable YAML. I've done a VI again, haven't I? I think my I'm auto typing. I'll just do a VIM. Cool. So 3 dashes again. It's all good practice. Name. Let's just say get the output of a command. Okay. And we've got hosts. And let's just do localhost again just to make it easy. Actually, let's not. Let's do hosts equals all, and I can run it against that client 1 server. We do gather facts. So if I turn that off, we're not going to go and gather those facts in this case. So we're then going to do a task, and then the task name with a space, get the IP address. And then we've got a shell command, and the shell command will be ipconfig and then probably be this interface. I'm 100% sure on that one. We'll see if that's correct. We may need to go back and correct this later. We'll see. And then we just run this. So let's just run this command now. So Ansible -playbook -I inventory, and then we'll just do register variable. So it's only going to work on the server that works. So that's going to, it says a failed. So let's see what's. Did I do ipconfig? Yes. All right. ipconfig won't work. So that's because I've been working on Windows systems pretty recently. Let's yeah, ipconfig. Yeah, that's not going to work at all. Let's just do an if config and right quit here. Let's try that again. That looks better. So you can see we just got changed, and we don't have actually any more information about how that's changed. So it's not really giving us the IP address or anything. So it's not very useful in its current state. So we need to edit this file to add a bit more information. So this is where we're going to use that register. So we've got that shell. We then need to then go register, and we're going to register it as a variable. So we register it as IP address, say, and then we have another debug to then print it out for us to be able to see it. So let's rerun this. Okay, let me clear that and run it again, because that's a bit. It's a big output because I'm running just literally passing that output, so it's gonna give quite a lot of information. So because it's on debug, we're gonna get every bit of information here. So we've got Ansible facts discovered, interpreter, change equal to the command it ran. So ipconfig, when it started, when it ended, all that standard error. There's no error. Standard out, which is the output of the command. We've then got the actual output, how it would look. So you can see the formatting is not great, but we can see all the information here is registered there. But of course, we can continue trying to clean this up. So there's one thing additional we can do, is just to, as we saw there, the standard out was what we're interested in. So we can do dot standard out and run it again. And we've got it a little bit smaller again, so we can see IP address.standard out. We can see we've got a bit more information here, and it's not crazy massive output like we had earlier up here, where we had everything that's possibly come out there. So we can also do, as a final thing, is we can also do a bit of splitting there. So do standard out dot split, and then how we're going to split it. And if you had a look again, if you go back up, if I quit out of this, let me just show you that. If we go up a little bit again, so we can see in here this /n, which basically means it's a new line. But because of the way it's printing it out, it's just printing out all the non-readable characters, this is something we wouldn't see normally. It's just telling it to have a new line and all these new line formatting. Unfortunately, we're seeing that because it's the way it's printing out. So we can handle that in a different way by having that split command essentially. So we've got the variable, we've got just the standard out, and then we're going to say dot split, and then we're going to say what we're going to split on, and it'll be that new line character. Oops. Then we just do that, and then we just do that. And we can say what index value we want to split on. Do we want I think we want the first one because this second line wasn't too interesting. It's more so 0 wouldn't be too interesting because it's just got the up and broadcast and stuff like that. It's the second one that's actually got the actual IP address is the one is what we're interested in. So let's try that. So again, we right quit and let's run this again. And now we've got inet 10.0.0.28, which is the IP address, the net mask, and the broadcast address. So yeah, that looks a lot better. So yeah, that's quite a nice way to show you a bit about what we did there. So all this should be familiar: the name, the host, the gather facts. Turning off gather facts means we're not going to gather facts before we execute. We're then going to run some specific tasks. We're going to get this is just the name of the task. We're going to run a shell command, which is on the sh, basically a command. We SSH onto the server. We then run that command at the shell prompt, and then we're going to register what the output of this as the variable IP address. And then using the debug command, it allows us to pull information out, and we then pull in the variable IP address. We're then filtering for just the standard output, and then we're splitting the standard output with the new line character. And then finally, we're just saying we want the first section of that. So if we set that to second section or the third section, you'll see the output change. So if I do the zeroth or the very first section, perhaps is probably the best way to put it, it all looks slightly different. Again, we should have the first line so that the flags up broadcast running stuff, which is not what we want to see, but it gives you an idea. So basically each one, it starts at 0, each one iterates by 1, so every single time it has that new line character, it counts one more, and you can split it by that. So we just set that to 1 in this case. So the final thing I want to do, so the additional thing I want to do is actually, with that fact we just literally got from the system by running that command, I'm going to then try and add that as a new variable. So we're going to create a brand new variable that's actually stored as a fact. So let's do this. So vim again and register variable, sorry. So we've got all this. So we want to change this slightly. So let's go back to insert. We've got the register line here. So what we want to do now is set underscore fact. And we set a colon there. If you're not sure about formatting, just do it again, and it will always make sure it's in the right place. And then we're going to set IP underscore address to, and then we're going to have quote double curly braces, which then opens. So again, we're going to call a variable. So we're going to do something with that variable. So it's IP underscore address dot, going to be standard out again, but we want to do a bit more with the formatting, so try and just get the IP. It's a bit horrendous, but it's the way it works. So we're going to split on the N again. Because we've got double quotes there, we need to be careful with just have a single quote. And close that there. Okay, and then we want another split. So we want to do 1 to get that first section, and then we want another split to try and get everything before that particular space. Okay, and then that's going to be a 1 as well. So let's try and got that. And then we have the debug, which will then, it just will be var equals IP underscore address. Let's see how I go. So I've got everything there. It looks all right. So what I'm doing is I'm splitting by the N character, and then I'm going to do a standard split, which is basically on spaces. and if we have a space, I'm doing the second space. So it was mentioning the IP address, and then it was mentioning the actual IP address itself. So it's saying like I can't remember exactly how it was, but it's like IP colon space and then the actual IP address. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting, as soon as after that space, I'm getting whatever's in there, and the next space will be something like net mask. So I'm just getting that very targeted value in this way. So if we right quit and we run the same command again, so I've done something wrong with the lines here. Syntax name. Okay, let me have a look. So we've got tasks. Name, get IP address, shell, ipconfig, register IP address, set fact. Oh, there we go. Because it's an action, should have there. So it's a set fact. That needs a dash on that one because it's a particular action. So let's do that. Yep, that looks better. So if you notice yeah, as I mentioned before, it's not getting in the, it's not getting facts because I disabled that there. As you can see, it's gone and set the fact, and then for the debug we can see IP address is just 10.02.8. So if I just quickly modify that again to show you without this additional splits, or no, let's just go up. It'll be easier just to scroll up over the previous output. We can see, oh, it's gone and remove that. Great. So let me just remove that last split, then we can see how that's working. So if we go back to 0 here, it will be the, so I'll just do a clear and then do a, whoops. Yep, you can see it's come up with inet. So just before the, so there's inet space and then IP address. So that's why we're setting that second one. So you can just see it's just doing a double split essentially. It's splitting on the new line to get that first chunk, and then it's splitting that chunk again to get just the IP address, which we finally have here. Okay, the final thing really is to prompt for variables really. So there may be cases where you may need to have certain things being prompt for, like a, I don't know, a particular variable, I don't know, which package you want to install or something like that, and you'll go and find the package on this particular area and then go and grab it and install it on the system. So it could be any kind of prompt, as it's, yeah, whatever you want to set it to. It could also be something like as simple as a username or password that you may want to prompt. So we're going to do this in this example. We're going to just create a simple script that's going to prompt for username and password, and actually print it out, which is probably not the best thing in the world to do, but let's do that. We call it get user and pass.yaml. I did a VI again, didn't I? Yep. So VIM, I much prefer it this way. My formatting is terrible, so it helps if I don't have to think about it too much. So let's do a name, and then get user input, and in the hosts, we can just do it all again. We're not going to gather facts, so we don't need it for this. No. And then we're going to have vars underscore prompt. So we're going to prompt for a variable. We have a name, and we call it username. And then the prompt will be enter your username, private equals no, and name, of course, password, and then prompt, enter your password, and as you probably guessed, private, yes. So obviously we don't want to display that as I type it in. That's the idea behind that one. And then tasks. So in this case, I want this to go back over here. Should be aligned here. Yep. And then we have tasks and then a debug because we need to see what we set. Make sure it works. MSG, your username is username, extra spaces, and password is password, which is the world's worst script, but yeah, it's good for an example. Let's see how we get on with that. See if I've formatted everything nicely. Actually, I'll probably just play it. Let me just make that local host because we're not really going to apply it against any machine. It's just a prompting tool, so it doesn't really make sense to have it as host or. Let me just put that to localhost. Okay, so Ansible hyphen playbook get user and pass. So wasn't it like enter username here? Okay, so it obviously doesn't like my prompt with the stuff on it. So let me just try double quotes. Could be it doesn't like the colon at the end. Let's see. Whoops. Helps if I put the right quotes there. Let's try that again. Let's just have a go again. See what the issue is. So, right. So it doesn't like that private section. I think it still doesn't like the prompt. So let me try and change the prompt without any colon on the end. I think it's moaning about that essentially. I don't think the prompt likes that option available there. Also, I don't like the way it's formatted. It should normally be like that. Let's see. Have I fixed it now? Yep. Okay, that's good. So the reason why it doesn't like that colon on the end because it's really going to put it there. Ugh, yeah, typically. So username, I'll put user1, something really interesting, and let's put a really complex password. And my username is user1, and my password is password1 with a capital P. God help you if that's your username and password, because you're not going to get very far. Okay. I think the very final thing I really want to cover here is just being able to read and access variables from separate YAML or even JSON files if you know JSON. I'm going to stick with the YAML because I don't want to try and learn another language or a markup language in this case. So rather than reinvent the wheel, let's just stay with YAML, and then it's all very familiar with this course. Okay, so what we're going to have is a new file. We'll create a new file called variables. And we'll give some variables basically. I'll just do my name is Colin England. The course is RHCS. Oh no, it'll be RHC RHCE. Gotta forget what course I'm doing now. And location, of course, Melbourne. Okay, There's a few values, and we'll just do a right quit. So that's my variables.yaml. So on its own, it doesn't do much. Okay. So we're now going to make a new YAML file, which is going to call these variables and use them. So we'll just call it get variable from file.yaml, and again / name collect variable from a file. Hosts, localhost, because we're going to run it locally here, and the vars underscore file, you probably guessed, equals variable. Is it variables or variable? God knows. I think it's variables.yaml. I hope it's right. We'll soon find out. And then gather facts equals false, because we don't need the facts to be gathered from the system, because we're literally defining everything here. And tasks. Then we're going to run a debug again to then pull this information out. So debug and then MSG. So you can see this debug is really good for exactly that, debugging, and it helps you to find where you may have gone wrong. So you can pull out the variable using debug in a message and say, this is what variable I'm getting, and oh yeah, there I'm going wrong or whatever, or I'm getting to this, or you can have a debug saying, and you've got to this point, you failed or something, if it's running lots of a quite complex script. So I do like debug a lot. So debug, we can have the message. Let's have my name is, and then name. So you can just see it's going to pull the variable straight out of this. The course I am attending is, so hope I got all these variables right. Well, I suppose we'll soon find out. And my location is, and then location. Okay, just have a quick look. There's nothing looks too crazy wrong there. Let's see. Let's give it a go and see what happens. So Ansible playbook, get variable from file. Here you go. So it's pulled it out quite nicely. So my name's Colin England. The course I'm attending is RHCE, and the location is Melbourne. So yeah, that's pulled out of the edition of a file. So you could have, it's a good way to, you could have a variable file where you store those variables in there, and then you can use those on demand as required. So I think that's pretty much everything on variables and facts. They kind of obviously quite aligned to each other, and you can store facts as variables. So that's something you go get from the system, store it as a variable, and then you can use that to make various decisions on the system. So as I mentioned, like we went and got the version of Red Hat. We can see it's version 8.3. Then I can perhaps make a decision on in the script to say I want to install this particular package or do a particular action. Yeah, perhaps you need a patch. You've got a vulnerability in the system against Red Hat 8.3. You know that particular kernel is vulnerable. We go and filter for that kernel. All the machines that have got kernel have that package installed. The ones that don't have that kernel don't have that package installed, or that particular mitigation script. Yeah, thanks as always for watching. I'll catch you next one. Thank you. So that concludes the video. As always, I've popped on the screen now my Ko-fi page. That's a great place to donate if that's something you're interested in, to help support this channel. Also, I've put the TeePublic page for any merchandise I've got. So I've got a few t-shirts and stuff like that, if that's anything you're interested in. And finally, I've put my Discord server details as well as in description for all these things, details, so you can chat there. I'll try and answer questions when I've got a spare few minutes, and try and help you out where I can. Thank you.